Bourbon has been booming, but are we headed for a bust? There's some new data out that suggests we might be. And if you want to hear about it, then stick around. So before we get started, we'd like to take a moment to thank our Patreon supporters. We could not do this without you. We provide a lot of social benefits to a lot of people, but not all of those opportunities actually monetize and help pay for the production of the podcast or keeping Bourbon Real Talk community going. And so we want to thank all of you out there that support us on a monthly basis. But it's not just a donation. We do have some member benefits. We have a lot of bonus content, special offers, distillery takeovers, barrel picks, in-person meetups, monthly virtual bottle shares, and massive discounts on merch. So whether you just want to support the podcast or you're really interested in some of the benefits, we'd love for you to check it out if you are interested in supporting us. So disclaimers for this episode. Recently, there is an online alcohol kind of periodical called thedrinksbusiness.com, and they released an article that stated that the value of rare whiskey bottles has declined in the past 12 months. And that was according to the Knight Frank Luxury Investment Index. And that is significant data because it has been many years since that happened. Now, this is a complex situation to analyze. There's a lot of market variables that affect when bourbon is actually going to have a downturn. And the truth is, nobody really knows when it's going to happen. But I am going to share a bit of industry information with you. And at the end, I will provide my opinion based on that information. But please keep in mind that it is just my opinion. So to understand what we're talking about with the bust, you need to know that there was a time period that we refer to as the Bourbon Dark Ages. This started in the 1960s and ran through the 70s, 80s, and 90s. During that time, vodka was growing in popularity, and a lot of it was because there were some misunderstandings about what vodka really was. And vodka was making a lot of false claims about weight loss, that somehow clear spirits didn't have calories, but brown spirits actually had sugar in them and whatnot. And the truth is, both vodka and whiskey have no sugar in them and are both keto friendly. All of these changes caused whiskey to lose market share. Vodka also claimed to be odorless so that you could drink during the day without being caught. And they were also growing with the cocktail culture. So all of these things started to cause a downturn for bourbon. They also tried some other things to turn things around for whiskey. They had decanter series, and they would even sometimes hire famous artists to do a series of paintings that would be produced on the bottles, and that would make customers want to buy the whiskey, not for the whiskey inside, but for the decoration piece. And because they were losing market share and the industry was shrinking, there were price wars, and the prices for whiskey started going down and down and down, and many whiskey distilleries went out of business and many brands went away. And so we had to figure out a way to get out of this, and all of the changes that led up to the current bourbon boom that we have now probably started in about 1984 when Elmer T. Lee invented Blanton's with the help of Freddie Johnson's father, who was the barrel warehouse manager. And that was the first ever single barrel bourbon. And that was something that they could sell for a premium price and market it as a unique experience because every release was going to be different from the one before. And hopefully that would encourage people who like the whiskey to try and get a hold of every release that came out so that they could see what the differences were. And they were looking for repeat customers, and they were looking for a way to sell whiskey at a higher price. That turned out to be a success. And in 1987, Booker No from Jim Beam invented Booker's, and it was one of the first widely distributed cash strengths, and it was also the first whiskey to be publicly advertised as a small batch. And that was a successful launch, the Booker's product. So in 1992, Jim Beam launched their whole small batch series with Baker's, Basil Hayden, and Knob Creek. And then in 1994, Pappy Van Winkle hit shelves with the first 20-year product. So the path forward turned out to be the opposite of what the industry had thought. It wasn't price wars, it was premiumization, where they needed to get prices up and to market as a unique experience for the consumers out there.
Ha! I knew I was a bigger Bourbon Real Talk fan than you.
How do you know that?
Well, because I don't just use a prideful goat, Glenn. I got an official Bourbon Real Talk tumbler.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, I got this Bourbon Real Talk lanyard to carry my whiskey glass in.
Oh, well, speaking of whiskey glasses, do you have one of these?
No, I don't.
Rocks glass.
Oh, yeah?
Yep, official.
Well, I love my wife, and I bought her this official whiskey wife flask from Bourbon Real Talk.
Well, that's cute and everything, but I got my wife one of these.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Well,
You can just add your own liquor, and it's an actual cocktail right there in a jar.
Me and my wife like to make cocktails, so we got this simple syrup off the
Oh,
website.
do you?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, do you and your wife have one of these? This is an official sticker. You can only get these on the website.
No, but I do have these official coasters that have the Bourbon Real Talk logo on them, and I'm representing.
Well, while you're representing those little coasters of yours, I've got an aroma kit.
Do you?
Yeah, so I can smell literally everything in bourbon. Everything.
Well, I don't have that, but I do have this sample box that I keep all my samples in because I'm part of the community and I share samples.
Yeah, but do you have Glen toppers that are officially Bourbon Real Talk?
I don't have that, but I do have this large whiskey carrying case for my glasses so that I don't break them.
See, I knew you had that. That's why I have this, the smaller version, okay? It packs more easily into your suitcase. Don't have to mess with that big old thing, okay?
Suitcase, that's for lamos. Check this thing out. I have a Bourbon Real Talk bottle carrying bag. You can't beat that.
I don't know if I can because...
And on top of that, I have a Bourbon Real Talk t-shirt. I'm the bigger fan.
Oh, I can beat that. Is it extra schmedium?
No, I don't have an extra medium.
Ha! Extra schmedium.
You might be the bigger fan. You win.
I knew it.
So whether you're a Bourbon Real Talk super fan or simply looking for quality whiskey swag, head over to bourbonrealtalk.com today.
The easiest indicator of what's going on with the bourbon boom is the secondary market and the secondary prices. And when I say that, the secondary market would be anything that is a price that's consumer to consumer. So you can do that through auction houses legally. Some auction houses have licensing to be able to buy a spirit and then sell it to somebody else. But the most common way is probably on private Facebook groups. And as we mentioned earlier, there are luxury good indexes that pay attention to the pricing of luxury goods, and they report on those. And it was just so interesting to me that that whiskey secondary prices had gone down for the first time in years and years and years. And I have personally been feeling it. I have heard stories from people that the price for playing razzles and things like that have gone down. But there have been a lot of market disruptions that muddy the water when you try to do this type of analysis. For instance, there's been a ton of non-distiller producers that have come into the market, and that's caused consumer fragmentation, which spreads the data out to a lot of small companies that maybe are not reporting their numbers the way that the publicly traded companies are. And it makes it very difficult for anyone to run a full market analysis of what's going on. And in that same vein, we've had an explosion of craft distilleries, and it's hard to tell if we saw a downturn, for instance, in the growth rate of the large distilleries. Is that because the market is slowing down, or is that because craft has taken some market share from them? And the same is true for foreign market growth. Most of the large distilleries have had tremendous growth overseas. India's become a big target market. Japan has been for years, but a lot of the big distilleries are expanding in Europe in a major way. They're expanding in China in a major way. And then another thing that I think gets overlooked quite often is FOMO has changed consumer behavior. I mean, if you look at this wall behind me, if I had this number of open bottles in my house in the middle of the Bourbon Dark Ages, say 1996, I would have been considered a lunatic because nobody bought this many bottles. But fear of missing out changed consumer behavior. And so one of the things that we have to take into consideration when we're trying to look at market growth and numbers is if the average whiskey consumer is buying 10 times the amount of whiskey that they would have if everything had been shelf available, then the market's 10 times larger than it's going to be whenever that behavior goes away. And another major factor that's caused a lot of this growth is the bourbon secondary market has created false demand. And so when you're trying to analyze what's going on with the market, if 50% of the buyers out there are not consumers. They're only there because they want to capitalize on the gap between supply and demand, and they want to make a profit. Well, now you have all of this false demand in the market that whenever inventory goes back up and things stabilize, those people aren't going to be buyers anymore. And what happens to the market when you take all of those people away all at once? Another major contributing factor has been COVID. COVID, when the government locked everybody inside their houses and started sending them checks as subsidy payments, and a lot of people's income didn't change that much, it provided a lot of disposable time and a lot of disposable resources. And we started to see the secondary prices skyrocket during COVID in a way that I didn't think was possible. And another element of COVID was sports gambling went away because sports teams were not playing to prevent the spread, and they didn't want people coming into stadiums. And while sports teams aren't playing, there's no sports gambling. But there are people who love to gamble, and they started gambling on whiskey. And they would do it by playing razzes, and somebody'd take a bottle and they'd say, oh, okay, well, this bottle is worth $650. And so I'm going to sell 10 spots attached to the Illinois State Lottery 0 through 9. And I'm going to sell these spots for, say, $70 a piece. So you have a 1 in 10 chance if you give me $70 of winning the $650 bottle. And people got so involved with that when sports gambling went away that caused the prices of bottles to skyrocket. There are some counterpoints to the idea that the downturn in secondary markets may be an indication that the bourbon boom is over. One is that brand acquisitions are up. So we've seen Blue Run get purchased recently. We saw Penelope get purchased recently. And there's an argument to be made that those large corporations that invested such large sums of money wouldn't have done so unless they saw a bright future in bourbon. But there's another argument to be made, especially in the case of Penelope, that that may have been a defensive tactic on the part of MGP buying Penelope, because they may be anticipating that the opportunity to continue to make money by selling their whiskey to non-distiller producers may be shrinking, and they need to have capacity in brands that they own to liquidate their production capacity rather than relying on the market to buy it because they know a downturn is coming. So I didn't really know how to interpret that one. That one could be looked at either way. Another thing to consider is that the drop in prices may be the market giving back some of the gains that were caused by COVID. The COVID conditions have changed for the market. There was some what I'd call irrational exuberance in the secondary market during that time frame. And it may be the market just be giving back some of that because it just went too far too fast. But that doesn't mean that the growth of bourbon is going to slow down. And then another thing to consider is that many more stores have adopted predatory pricing practices and their price gouging on the bottles that would normally trade on the secondary. And anytime the market price starts to adjust up to, what would be level with supply, you're going to see some downward pressure on the black market prices. And so that could have been a contributing factor. So in conclusion, there's no doubt that the bourbon boom has cooled off a little bit. Inflation has caused some changes in buyer behavior, and more people are talking about drinking well without just drinking allocated whiskeys. So you're seeing a lot more videos where people are coming out and saying, hey, I know that Knob Creek 18 is cool, but when you consider how good Knob Creek 9-year is and how available it is, it may not be worth it to chase it. So we're seeing more of that. We're seeing fear of missing out reducing. But I don't think that this downturn in prices and this cooling of the market is actually the beginning of a precipitous drop. I think that I wouldn't expect there to be any bust, if you will, until the distillery expansion's new inventory starts to hit markets, and that's got to be at least 5 to 7 years away. So is there a bourbon bust right now? No, I don't think so. Is there going to be a bourbon bust? 100%. So if this is your first time watching the show, we want to thank you for the view and tell you a little bit about our channel. We are all about bringing people together around bourbon. And that's something that's personally important to me because I lost my younger brother, Sean, to suicide in 2014. And after that event took place, I started questioning what led up to that and what could be done differently to keep other people from feeling the way that my brother did whenever he decided to take his life. And I realized that he had lost his connection to the world around him. And I started to see how bourbon brought people together. And I thought to myself, maybe if I can get people connected to bourbon, the bourbon will do the rest of the job and get people connected to others. And that's part of the reason why we started the channel, but it's also part of the reason why we started Bourbon Real Talk Community. You need these community forums to meet each other and to coordinate. And there is a lot of hate out there on the internet, and we wanted to create a space that was troll-free. And we did that with Bourbon Real Talk Community. But seeing all of that hate out there also made me realize that if there are people out there on the internet that can hate you even though they don't really know you, there's nothing that keeps me from loving you even though I don't really know you. And that's why we sign off the same way every week, and that's this. If you woke up this morning and you were unsure whether or not anyone loved you, just know that I love you. And I'll see you next time on Bourbon Real Talk. A whiskey troll is a person who seeks negative attention and uses contrarian attitudes to derail civil discussion in online forums. They communicate in ways they never would face-to-face because they're keyboard warriors. Their only goal is to make other people feel inferior.
Hey guys, I'm new here. I just got my first Blanton's.
And trust me, you probably paid way too much.
I don't care much about the Blantons, but nice.
There's no way that she didn't buy that at secondary. Idiot.
Oh, I know how you got that bottle.
So, are you sick and tired of the whiskey trolls running your fun online? Well, that's why we started Bourbon Real Talk Community. Congratulations. Let me know what you think when you open it up.
Hey, welcome to the group. Let me send you over a sample of Blanton's Gold and straight from the barrel. See how you like those.
I remember back to my first bottle of Blanton's. It was the birthday to my son, and we enjoy it every year on his birthday. Congrats.
So if you're looking to connect with some people online who aren't, head over to facebook.com and join Bourbon Real Talk Community today.